Hello everyone and welcome to today's Stay at Home Art Club. Today we're going to be looking at drawing the nose straight on. So we're just going to be doing one view, none of this stuff, just straight on. Hope you're doing okay today. Please ignore the thin film of smoke filling my kitchen. I just burned some toast. Okay, so let's look at what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to be continuing working on my portrait of Isa, so you can be adding in your nose to your portrait now today if you'd like. Let's take a bit of time to look at the structure of the nose. If you are particularly squeamish and don't really want to look at some anatomical diagrams, fast forward to this time and then it'll all be over. We'll just be on the drawing. Alright, so we're looking inside a nose in profile here. So we're just really focusing in on the nose part of this drawing, and we're going to look at how the different bits of our nose fit together. So at the top of your nose, which is the bit in between your eyes, that's made of bone. That's still part of your skull. And if you take your finger and kind of feel down the way, and about halfway down your nose, it gets a lot more bendy, and that's the bit shown in here in this diagram in light blue, and that is cartilage. That's a bit more soft, a bit more flexible, and that is what makes up most of your nose. And that means if you get punched in the face, that doesn't shatter your entire skull. So if you give your nose a wee wiggle there, you can feel how that cartilage is working. And we're also going to take some time to kind of feel the tip of your nose. And if you look in our second diagram here, you can see that little bit of cartilage that's creating the shape of the front of the nose. And this is a bit that I find people have the most difficulty drawing. So if you really take some time to familiarise yourself with that structure and think about how it is separate from the nostrils and kind of separate from the rest of the nose, if you really feel it, it has its own shape. It's not just going straight forward. That'll help your drawing be much better, I feel. So I'm going to get you to do that thing again where you have a wee feel of your face and have a real feel around the structures within your nose that we just talked about. And particularly I think this little bit here, the wobbles, that cartilage, feeling the shape of the tip of your nose helps you really understand how all the different bits fit together and how the light's going to hit it. So generally it'll be quite shaded here, depending on how narrow or how wide your nose is. Sometimes people have freckles here, depending on how your brow is. There might be more shadow in here. Some people have quite a heavy brow, some people have a kind of a more flat nose. Because we're not doing side on, we don't really need to worry about the bridge too much. But think about it, if there is a bridge in the nose, there is going to be a bit more light catching here. And it's important to think about the shape of the nostrils as well, because we have a tendency to draw those as circles, and they're not. They're their own bit of flesh coming out here. So just take a wee while to really feel the structures of your nose and familiarise yourself with them. So it's hard to place a nose if you don't have any eyes. So here I've got my eyes drawn in, and remember that the distance between the eyes is the same as the length of one eye. So I've got that in the middle there, and I've also got my centre line to show the middle of my face. It's very important that we've got our eyes correctly spaced, because if you remember from the last video, the edges of our nose, the dimples at the side of our nostrils, correspond with the inner corner of the eyes. So I've drawn some lines in there so I can work out the width of my nose. There we go, so I've put in some little dots now just to work out where the edges of my nose are, so I know what my parameters are, and rubbed out my line. Alright, now we're on to that little tip of the nose we were talking about. So what you want to do is think about that little bit you felt in your nose earlier and look at your picture and try and have a look at what shape you think the tip of the nose is. So mine here is kind of quite broad and quite round, so I'm sketching in that shape. So you're really looking at the tip of the nose, it's kind of catching the light, it's maybe facing slightly up the way, and that's what you're trying to get the sense of here. The lines I'm drawing up now are the narrowest bit of the nose, so it's if you take the line from the edges of that little tip we just drew right up and into the brow bone. So it's really that narrowest bit of the nose there, and if you kind of take your finger up, it's that bit that you're going to be touching when you touch the very edge of your nose, and that's what we're drawing here. Here I'm just emphasising the dimples in at the side of the nostrils, because that's going to be kind of the widest part of our nose generally. With this line I'm marking the plane of the nostril, so that is where it's coming from that tip of your nose, that wobbly bit, out and down to meet the dimple. So it's going to be kind of showing that outward direction of the nose where it's flaring out and down. Now we're beginning to draw the underside of the nostril, so that's the bit where we curve round from the dimple underneath the hole going up our nose and into the centre. Now we're adding a line which isn't going to be here for long. It's kind of showing where the edge joins the cheek. So this line isn't really on the face, but it's going to really help guide our shading. So it's if you feel down the outer edges of your nose where it's meeting your face, that's the lines we're drawing. Now we're kind of drawing the space in between the nostrils here. So if you feel that wobbly tip of your nose and think about how that comes in and down to join your top lip in between your nostrils, that's the line we're drawing here, and that's what's going to really help give that sense that the nose is coming back in, and helps give that sense of depth, which is quite often missing from people's drawings. So you'll notice now that we're starting to put in the nostrils, and this is often the thing that people do first, but here we're doing it last. And what we're doing is we're just drawing the outer shape, so you really need to pay attention to the shape of the nostrils you're drawing. They're not all the same, they're not round and circular, they're slightly at an angle, so we just want to be really using our observation skills here and making sure that we're getting them in the right shape. The last bit I'm doing here is putting a curved line across the nose, and this is going to help guide my shading and reminds me that the nose isn't just flat, we're describing a 3D thing here, and that's going to help us get that real sense of perspective with our shading and reminds us where the bridge of our nose is. So that's our drawing for the structure of the nose. We're going to rub out most of this because we're not going to have lines, there's not any real lines on a face, and now we're going to learn how to describe it with shading in a wee bit once I've shown you it in situ in my drawing. Step 1, we're rubbing it all out, so rub out all your lines so you can just faintly see them. I started shading in my nostrils as they are the darkest point on the face, so I'm going to start with them by defining what the darkest shade is I'm going to use. The next darkest space is generally in that kind of eye socket underneath the brow bone, so I'm going to shade in there next. I'm doing it quite lightly at this point because I don't want to commit too quickly to too dark a tone, so we're going to keep it kind of mid-tone there and build up gently. I'm using my pencil on its side so I don't get any scratchy pencil marks. Next bit we're going to start shading is defining that tip of that nose. So round and underneath the tip of the nose, that little wobbly bit, that's going to be casting a shadow as that's the bit sticking out. And then beginning to shade the edges of that nose. So coming away from the very top of the nose, the sides of the nose, how they're sloping away, I'm starting to shade them with a bit of a mid-tone, keeping my pencil marks nice and smooth. From there, I'm just building up what I've already done, maybe adding some darker sections where I'm a bit more confident where they are, just making sure I'm covering the whole area. Onto the good stuff, I'm putting that shadow in round the sides of the dimples at the sides of our nose, so where our nostrils meet our cheeks, and also that little bit right at the bottom in the middle of our nose, in between our nostrils, that dark line there. I'm now beginning to add a little bit of shading to the top of the nose, because that's not all going to be catching the light, so maybe just above that little wibbly bit, maybe there's a little dip there as there is in my picture. So just really looking at that top of the nose, look at where the light's hitting it and leave that white. If there's any shading, put a little bit of shade in there. Then coming back out to those nostrils, shading where they are, how far does the dimple come out, is it casting a shadow on the face, and where does it intersect with the shading around at the tip of the nose. So we're going to start joining all these areas of shading together. We're really looking to start connecting our nose to our face, so maybe edging out some of that shading into where it meets the cheeks, the shadows that it cast onto the upper lip. Here I've used my finger to blend some of my tones together there, just to give it a bit of a sense of togetherness, and what we're going to need to do later is pick out some of those light tones again. I'm balancing my shading again, making sure I've got my tones right. I'd gone a bit too light, so I've added some more of that darkness back in. It's important to keep that definition of all the different parts of the nose so it doesn't all blend into one. Finally, I've used my rubber here to pick out some highlights, and then I've given them a quick rub with my finger so they're not too bright, but that's giving us our depth because we've got our light brights, we've got our really dark bits, and we've got all our shades in between. So hopefully you found today's tips helpful. Here's my finished pencil drawing, and I've got my structure drawn in here ready for when we learn how to draw skin in colour in a few videos time. So get ready for that, and happy drawing of noses. So today's joke is, I was talking to my friend the other day and I said, "Your nose is running," and he said, "It's not." Ha! No words. Alright. Have a lovely weekend. Take care. Happy drawing of noses.